Nobody saw this coming. Not the viewers, not the fans. Not the people who had spent months watching Matt Armstrong fight his way through one of the most ambitious hypercar rebuilds ever attempted on YouTube. Everyone was locked in on one story. Alex G's Bugatti Chiron, the car that Bugatti themselves said couldn't be saved but was slowly dragged back from the dead inside a Miami garage. That was supposed to be the climax. That was supposed to be the moment everyone had been waiting for. And then Matt Armstrong walked into a room with a repossessed Bugatti Veyron. And everything changed. Not just any Bugatti, a repossessed one. A car that was taken back. A car that someone once had and then lost. This isn't just buying a hypercar. This is buying someone else's collapse hypercar. Hit the like button, share this, and subscribe right now. Because this story proves that Bugatti ownership can turn from dream to disaster faster than anyone expects, and Matt Armstrong just stepped directly into the proof. Because the question of missing original parts started to emerge. A repossessed car doesn't always come with everything it left the factory with. Sometimes components go missing between the dream and the disaster. Sometimes owners, facing mounting costs, make decisions about what stays and what gets sold. And on a Veyron, original parts aren't just expensive to replace. Some of them are genuinely difficult to source at any price. To understand why this moment matters so much, you have to go back and remember where everyone thought this story was heading. Because for months, the entire Bugatti conversation around Matt Armstrong had been building toward one singular moment, the completion of Alex G's Chiron. That car had become more than a rebuild project. It had become a statement. A direct, public, undeniable challenge to everything Bugatti's official position had been claiming about their own vehicles. Remember what had to happen to get that Chiron even close to running? The car had arrived with the front monocoque completely separated. Not cracked, not bent, separated. The exhaust system was custom built. And then came the moment that the whole channel had been building toward, the gearbox engaging. The sound of a car that Bugatti's own narrative said should not be on the road, proving that it could be. That was supposed to be the peak of the story, and instead, he pivoted. Instead of settling into the satisfaction of what had been accomplished, Matt's attention moved somewhere else entirely, but the financial and psychological risk of stepping into a car that carries an entire hidden history of failure. The repossessed Bugatti Veyron wasn't just a new project, it was a plot twist. And for the viewers who had invested months into the Chiron storyline, it felt like a betrayal in the best possible way. Just when the resolution was almost within reach, a second story appeared from the shadows, and this one hit differently. Because here's what makes this matter beyond just the car itself. Matt Armstrong had already made his position clear through the Chiron rebuild. He had won that argument with a running engine and an engaging gearbox. But stepping into a repossessed Veyron takes that confrontation into completely different territory. Because the Chiron was about rebuilding damage. The Veyron is about something more uncomfortable, uncovering what happens when the dream of Bugatti ownership breaks down entirely, not because the car got crashed, but because the weight of owning it became too much for the person who had it. And Matt Rimac is watching all of this. The man who now runs Bugatti, who oversees the brand's legacy and its claims about what these cars are and who should be working on them. Because if Matt can walk into a car with an unknown history, a hidden damage report, and the ghost of financial collapse attached to it, and bring it back, what does that say about the mythology Bugatti has built around these machines? But before any of that can be answered, someone has to understand what this car actually is. Think about the original owner for a moment. Because somebody bought this Veyron, somebody sat in a showroom, or worked through a private dealer, or flew somewhere for a handover, and they handed over money that most people will never see in their lifetime. And at that moment, this car represented something for them. Success, arrival, the absolute peak of what was achievable. The Bugatti Veyron wasn't just a fast car when it launched, it was proof of concept. Proof that human engineering could build something that pushed past every rational boundary of what a road car should be able to do. And somebody owned this exact one, and then they lost it. The repossession is the part nobody wants to talk about, because it forces a question that makes wealthy people deeply uncomfortable. How does someone who can afford a Bugatti Veyron end up in a position where it gets taken back? The answers are rarely simple. Sometimes it's a business collapse that happened faster than anyone anticipated. Sometimes it's debt that accumulated quietly over years and finally became impossible to service. Sometimes it's repair bills. Because here's the part that people outside the ultra-wealth world don't fully understand. The purchase price of a Bugatti Veyron is not the expensive part of owning one. The expensive part is everything that comes after. The services. The tires alone can run into figures that sound like a down payment on a house. The fluids, the cooling system maintenance, the transmission checks, every single line item on a Veyron service invoice is a number that makes normal car owners feel like they're reading the wrong document. So what if the original owner hit a wall? What if the bills started coming in and the money wasn't there anymore? What if the car sat because driving it meant more wear, and more wear meant more cost, and at some point the decision was made, consciously or not, to just leave it? And leaving a Bugatti Veyron is not like leaving a regular car. Leaving a Veyron means the fluids start degrading. The seals dry out. The tires, which were never cheap, begin to deteriorate from the inside in ways that aren't visible until someone starts pushing the car. The cooling system, which has to manage the thermal output of a car making over 1,000 horsepower, begins to develop the kind of slow, quiet problems that only reveal themselves when everything is finally pressurized and running. Someone once lived the ultimate Bugatti fantasy in this car. What remains now is the financial wreckage of that dream. And this is what Matt Armstrong walked into. The first look at the car is always the most dangerous moment of any unknown acquisition because it sets the expectation for everything that follows. And with a repossessed Veyron, the visual impression is a trap because these cars were built to look extraordinary even in neglect. The body panels were engineered with such precision that surface-level cosmetic issues can distract from what's happening underneath. Matt knows this, which is why the inspection doesn't start with what looks good. It starts with what feels wrong, and things felt wrong. The interior tells a story that the exterior tries to hide. The wear on the seats, the condition of the dashboard, the way the materials have aged, all of it communicates how the car was kept, or more accurately, how it was left. Bugatti interiors are built to a standard that should endure, but neglect has a way of accelerating time. And in a car that had been sitting, potentially for extended periods, potentially without climate control, the interior becomes a map of everything the previous owner stopped caring about. Then, there's the gearbox anxiety. Because the Veyron's dual-clutch transmission is one of the most sophisticated, and consequently, one of the most expensive, components in any road car ever built. It is not a unit that responds well to sitting unused. The clutch packs, the hydraulic lines, the control electronics, every single part of that system requires regular cycling to stay healthy. And a car that was repossessed, that potentially sat without being driven properly, that may have had its maintenance interrupted at exactly the wrong moment. That gearbox becomes a source of fear that doesn't go away until the car is fully assessed under proper conditions. But that's where it got worse. The cooling system on a Veyron is not a single radiator with a fan attached to it. It is an engineered network of thermal management that exists because the car produces heat on a scale that normal cooling solutions simply cannot handle. There are multiple cooling circuits, multiple radiators, multiple points where degradation can begin silently and invisibly. Old coolant in a system that complex doesn't just cause inefficiency, it causes corrosion, it causes blockages. And in a car where heat management is existential to the engine's survival, a compromised cooling system isn't a maintenance issue. It's a time bomb. And then there are the tires. The Veyron runs on a specific tire configuration that was engineered for this car, and effectively this car alone. They are not a shelf item. They are not something you call around for and find in stock 3 towns over. Aged tires on a car that hasn't been driven regularly carry structural degradation that isn't visible on the surface. And the cost of replacing them, the full set, to the specification this car demands, is enough to destabilize anyone who isn't prepared for it. What they found next changed everything. And on a Veyron, original parts aren't just expensive to replace, some of them are genuinely difficult to source at any price.